I'm asked what right-wing art is, and people scoff because they don't think it exists. Well, I have to say that a lot of left-wing art only exists because it gets money. So, what we need to do is, if we want to create art that is not left-wing, and note, I do not say art that is explicitly right-wing, because I think that just telling the truth is right-wing. Telling the truth about human nature is right-wing.
I want now to introduce Alexander Adams, who is our next speaker. He is a British artist, critic, and poet. He has published widely over 2 decades, and his works include Culture War from 2019, Iconoclasm from 2020, and Women and Art from 2022. He then goes on to produce Abolish the Arts Council in 2022 and Dali in 2023. He has spoken to us previously several years ago, and it's my great pleasure to introduce him today. So thank you very much, Alexander Adams.
So thank you for coming. Good morning. We are living in dark times at the moment. When we think back to 1914, we were also living in dark times. There was the threat of war. The country was being demeaned and threatened and undermined from all sorts of areas. And it was at this time, in 1914, that a group of young, ambitious artists gathered together to form the Vorticist movement. They were led by Wyndham Lewis, Canadian, and also by Ezra Pound, the great poet and editor who went to found on the magazine called Blast, which was a radical departure in terms of typography and content, and was considered especially scandalous because of how ambitious and how provocative it was. And it is in the spirit of Vorticism that we ourselves, and here I would like to introduce you to Fen de Villiers, a very talented British sculptor who has recently exhibited with us as a founder member of the group, which we are calling, or we have been called the Vitalists, and so, as all good art movements are, they are named by their opponents, by their critics. And so we welcome it, and we are happy to call ourselves the Vitalists. It's in the spirit of Vorticism and of taking radical steps to oppose a moribund society, a moribund set of institutions such as the Royal Academy and the Tate and the National Gallery and the Arts Council, which have all proved themselves to be utterly hollowed out, worn as a skin suit by people who despise us, and right to be opposed by the artists that they have shut out. They have shut their doors on us. And when I speak to young artists, I'm contacted every week by young artists saying, I have no future here. Who will help me? How can I make my way when the doors are shut to me because of my skin color, because of my nationality? What do we do? Can you direct us to somewhere that might exhibit my art, that might publish my poetry, that might stage my plays? And at the moment, I have very few options to give them. And they say that they cannot speak in public, because if they speak in public, they will be condemned, they will be cancelled, they will be slurred, they will be even debanked. They may perhaps even lose where they live because they will not be able to pay their rent through the bank. And as every vanguard has, artists suffer, and they take on this suffering because it is their role to act as truth tellers. And with telling the truth, you carry a great responsibility. You suffer, so you must learn to suffer well. You have no choice. But that suffering means nothing without expression, without communication, without a way of spreading your word and finding a home for your art. When I married, my wife taught me a lesson that I should have learned when I was at college. Art is a social business. Find a home for your art. Find collectors. If you cannot sell your work, then donate it. Give it to people who will love it and take care of it after you are gone. Now, the doors of the museums are shut to us. Therefore, I say to young artists, start working for museums which have yet to be built. Your patrons will collect your work and it will go into new museums. The Tate Gallery is closed to you. It's closed to me. So we need to work hard to build up a collecting culture, a system of patronage, where you can help the young artists who are suffering, the young creators, the composers, the writers, the poets. You can stand shoulder to shoulder with them and help them achieve common artistic goals that we have, common beliefs. So, vitalism. We've been called vitalists. What does vitalism mean? It's not quite the same as traditionalism, or it's another understanding of traditionalism. Now, I know that this is perhaps a provocative suggestion here at the Traditional Britain group. I'm going to talk about another form of tradition, the sort of tradition that T.S. Eliot and Julius Evola understood, and that is the long-running tradition. The tradition that goes back, it is a tradition of spirit. It is not a tradition of forms. Now, there is a great place for architecture that is traditional, for town planning, for art, for the crafts, for masonry, where it is taught to young craftsmen and they learn their craft and become skilled. And if you are a reader of the schoolmen from medieval times, you will understand that if you become a skilled craftsman, you are a messenger from God, or the muses, the messengers of the gods, and you embody that. There is a place for that. But I suggest that there is also a place for artists who are more radical, who can seek to extend the tradition. If you think about the old masters, about Titian, about Leonardo, about Bruegel, they were not old masters in their time. They were new artists. They were doing something new. Bruegel was not an old master. He studied under Hieronymus Bosch. He started out as a copyist, as a graphic artist who was spreading the word of Hieronymus Bosch. It was only later that he developed the idea of the landscape with figures. And this was his great legacy. So his legacy was to continue the tradition, but also to break from the tradition. That is what we must do, and that is what we must encourage among young artists. So, again, what is vitalism? So vitalism is, I would say, an understanding of what the constants are in art, in what they are in human nature, what is passionate, what is guaranteed in our existence. The tragic view of humanity is that we are born to suffer, that we are born imperfect, that we have our burdens to carry, some of us more than others, and that this is unavoidable. Suffering is part of life. And for an artist like Edvard Munch, who painted the frieze of life, he wrote about, and in his diaries, and painted scenes from human life: birth, death, passion, suffering, jealousy, melancholy, rage. And all of these are constant presences. So as vitalists, it's our job to address these constant threads. And this also includes strength, action, dynamism. It also means reaching back to the tradition and evoking them and reviving mythology. But it will also involve an art that is perhaps not like what you have seen. I will remind you of what Charles Baudelaire said, that when you encounter beauty, there will be a touch of vulgarity, there will be a touch of strangeness. It will shock you. So the new art that is coming will not be entirely settling. It will be deeply unsettling in some cases, because it's talking about human nature, and human nature is a difficult thing to confront. It involves pain and suffering and loss and self-deception and lack of humility. So, as vitalists, our job is to get to the very core of what humans are, of what human experience is. I'm asked what right-wing art is, and people scoff because they don't think it exists. Well, I have to say that a lot of left-wing art only exists because it gets money. So, what we need to do is, if we want to create art that is not left-wing, and note, I do not say art that is explicitly right-wing, because I think that just telling the truth is right-wing. Telling the truth about human nature is right-wing. Then what we need to do is we need to build structures. We need to build structures which are commonly understood and taken for granted elsewhere in our society. So we need gallerists, we need publishers, we need critics, we need collectors, we need donors, we need people to go and visit these events to pay for tickets. But this also might be at a higher level as well. It might be donating money towards a production. At the moment, I'm in discussions with my colleague Fen, with people who are potential backers, people who are willing to put not only hundreds or thousands, but even millions into events, into organizations that will further our culture. And these will have to be distinct from the state, because the state is now the enemy of culture. Yeah. And as we create our own work, it will be perhaps not populist, or maybe not even popular. Much of the work that we revere now was not popular when it was made. It was considered strange or aberrant. Now, naturally, we have seen plenty of strange and aberrant work which will not last, that will not stand the test of time. But don't worry, the canon sweeps away bad work. The canon is accretive. So when you look at history, you will see, if you go back in time and look at a snapshot of what was popular, what was highly esteemed, much of it has disappeared without trace. There are people who were acclaimed as great masters, people who became rich beyond dreams, who had vast houses, had studios the size of this room, filled with tapestries and palms and fanciful objets. And they've been swept away by history. I could mention their names, but you wouldn't recognize them. They've gone. The canon accepts everything and then rejects what is worst. And what remains is only the most important. It is the essential. It is what the later generations talk about, that they get excited by. They have to, this is what artists tell other artists. These are the people you must look at. And that is why we lose the chaff but retain the wheat. So what is in the galleries, in the museums at the moment? It will be discarded. It will be lost to time. It will have no meaning. Don't become preoccupied by that. The problem is, of course, that we live amongst it now, and it's no use saying, well, in 100 years' time, no one will be interested in Anthony Gormley. Well, Yes, but you've still got to bump into his sculptures every time you go to an art biennale or a sort of a town festival. It's everywhere. But we have to make art for ourselves because the state will not accept art that we make. We're reaching a schism now where true art has become detached from the organs of state funding. So the Tate, the Arts Council, the Government Art Collection, the Ministry for Culture, which is also handling digital, sport, media, and all sorts of other things as well. That these are separate trends now, these are separate currents, and we have to recognize that. So, as part of that, we've set up an exhibition called Power and Intimacy, a one-week exhibition that we put on in central London, just right next to King's Cross Station, in a hired venue. We did this without any financial backing. The artists paid for it. We had no donors, we had no sponsors. We had no gallerist support us. We did it ourselves, and it's been a huge success. And the reason it was a success was because we put on good art, and we really believed it. And we wanted to do something special. We wanted to shake things up. We wanted to be the modern vorticists. We wanted something that would really excite people. And if you had come to the opening of the exhibition on Monday morning, you would have seen a huge crowd filling the gallery and filling the pavement outside. The atmosphere was electric, and it was electric because people were there in touch with real art, the sort of art that they are deprived of in the Tate Gallery, in the Hayward Gallery, in the Whitechapel Gallery. So, I would say to you, if you want to extend tradition, I recommend you do not try and shackle artists by telling them that the battle cry is forward to 1850. So, I know that many of us in a heartbeat would prefer to live in 1850 than today. Okay. Sadly, we have no time machine. That is not an option. So the future cannot look like the past. Therefore, the art that we make cannot look like the past. We cannot have pure traditionalism. We cannot have an attachment to form. We need an attachment to spirit. We need something that carries on what was done in the past and was great and was valued by our ancestors and preserved and cherished. We need something that extends that, but that does not mimic the forms. Now, certainly, if you live in a conservation area, you want a building that has to be built to conform with the buildings around it, and that's only proper. But we can't do that for new art. New art is portable. New art is dynamic. New art will change hands. It will cross national boundaries. It will be moved around. It will go from public exhibition to private collection, and then maybe to museum. It is not the same as architecture and heritage, though those are both very important subjects and need your backing also. So here I will invoke the ghost of someone that you heard speak, some of you met, some of you liked and cherished, and some of you disliked. Jonathan Bowden, a very serious man, a brilliant orator, someone who inspired people, and someone whose videos and speeches are cherished and shared amongst artists. So some of you, I know, had reservations about his intellectual standing, the quality of his argument, even his personal life, a very strange personal life, which his biographer Ed Dutton revealed to us all. So, although you may have reservations about some of the things that he said and his standing, he is revered amongst young artists today because he talked of reactionary modernism. He talked about those men of 1914, Ezra Pound, Wyndham Lewis, later joined by T.S. Eliot, who would become really important figures, really important creators, new creators, creators of brilliant art that would shock but would also extend the tradition. And you may indeed have some of these artists and creators coming up now who will start writing The Wasteland and end up writing the 4 quartets. So do not necessarily despair of traditional forms. They may indeed be embraced by these young radical artists, the vitalists among them. So Bowden talked about reactionary modernists, and he said that they were important because they extended what was done before, and they worked for an elite, either an aristocracy or a cultural elite. They were not populists. And in fact, they embraced the vanguard modernism because it was not populist, because it was not understood by the masses. You had to be educated to appreciate it. And some of the art now, I believe you will have to be educated and open-minded to understand and appreciate. Although I think that the average person may get much from this art. Young artists are ambitious. They do not and they cannot be shackled to the past. If you tell them that the future looks exactly like 1850, you will lose the most ambitious, credible, and brilliant minds of your time. Do not shackle them to this past. Tell them that they are the inheritors of it and that they can go on and take this further. But do not tell them that they cannot innovate or that their new original ideas are not welcome. I have been invited tomorrow to appear on GB News. I should be using this opportunity to publicly launch the vitalist movement. And I do not believe that opportunity, however small and fleeting it is, would have arisen if our vitalist movement was a traditionalist movement, a pure traditionalism, one that was attached to traditional forms but not attached to traditional spirit. There would not have been the excitement, there would not have been the massive surge in publicity, in sales, in responses, in visitors, if this had been a pure traditional exhibition. If you visit the exhibition, which closes tonight at 7 o'clock and which is open tomorrow morning between 10 and 12, you will see some tapestries. You will see art that refers to mythology. You will see bronze casting. You will see many things there that will be familiar to you, but you will see it done in a new way. You will also see new art that is surprising and colourful and ambitious, stuff that is not purely traditional. It's this fusion and recognition of the deep tradition that Evola spoke of that is at the core of the vitalist movement and of this exhibition and of the movement going forward. We're already having people coming to us, creators coming, saying, how can we join you? What can we do to help? And we're also talking to backers who are perhaps willing to allow us to use their spaces, willing to pay for insurance, to transport, and so forth. These sound like mundane details, but they make the difference between an exhibition happening and not happening. And you, in your own way, can do your own by supporting this movement, by encouraging us, and by allowing us to experiment, even though we may not be perhaps what you would expect or perhaps what you would hope for. I think that sometimes we, in the more traditional and slightly conservative outlook, and I'm including also some reactionaries, and I include myself in that, we sometimes allow the perfect to be the enemy of the good. We wish to have things that completely embody the things that we feel we should have. We should have a master allegorist. We should have a master dramatist like Shakespeare. We should have a master composer like Elgar, and so forth. I would say that perhaps in allowing perfect to be the enemy of good, you are also allowing perfect to be the enemy of great. Because what comes through that is great will be strange, it will be different, it will be not what you expect, it will be perhaps not what you would like. But you may come to understand how important it is, because it is part of a living culture, and a living culture must develop. We've heard already talk about sustaining a living culture. Something that's living grows. You cannot freeze it, you cannot fix it in aspic or in resin. So at the moment, the next stage is to take more exhibitions, to have more events, to do more publications, to expand what we do with the vitalists, and to bring in more people at the very top, backers, supporters, and as the elite come, so the population will follow, as it always was. Now, we have seen a lot of terrible elitism. We have suffered from it in our arts institutions. But also remember that the Medicis had art made for them. They were the elite. This art was locked away. It was kept in their private mansions. Sometimes it was placed in churches, and it was carved and set out in the piazza. But it was made for an elite, and it was appreciated for an elite. And so this is what we have to do, is we have to make art for the elite, and the population and the general understanding will follow. We cannot make our art on the basis of appealing to popular support. We have to make art that is really good, and then we have to educate people. We have to bring them on board once we have done the great work that needs to be done, which is only going to be supported by the elite, by connoisseurs, by lovers of art, people who have special knowledge and special appreciation. And this is the essential work for our group, for people of our outlook. You can stand shoulder to shoulder with these creators and help them do the difficult things. They have suffered cancellation. They have suffered blacklisting. They have been smeared. But you can support them. They will willingly take on this burden if you support them. So, it is essential for our society for us to have a living culture that embodies tradition in spirit, not tradition in form. Anyone can swear loyalty to a flag, but if that flag is controlled by your enemy, then they define what that flag means. They will tell you that the Union Jack is for multiculturalism, it's for openness, it's for democracies, it's for unlimited immigration, it's for trans rights, for whatever they say. And then, what are you holding? You're holding a symbol of the regime. Do not swear loyalty to a flag, swear loyalty to your beliefs, to your people. In my book, How to Start a Dissident Art Movement, and that title was deliberately ironic, it was on the edge. I talk about finding your tribe, finding your people. This might be whoever you closely identify with. It may be your family, it may be your local region. It may be your ethnic group, it may be your religious group. It may be the people who live in your county. It may be a political outlook. You may want to work for them. I just say to you, know who you value most, know who you trust most, know who you want to speak to, and work for them and with them. Do not work for everyone who exists within a national boundary. Resident or non-resident, friend or enemy, supportive or opponent. This is madness. It has never been done before. It cannot work. Do not do it. Work for your group. And you define what that group is. I am not telling you what that group is. You have to decide for yourself. That can be as large or as small as you want. In the book, How to Start a Dissident Art Movement, I talk about finding friends. And with the vitalists, I have found my friends and colleagues, and I ask you to try and think about your friends and the people who you support and the creators who you want to back, the thinkers that you want to back. And it makes a big difference sometimes when you do as little as buy a book or simply go up to them and shake their hand and say, I appreciate what you do. This is really important because we do suffer, but we willingly suffer. We know that being an artist comes with suffering. We have no choice. But that support does make a big difference. And being invited here to speak to you does make a big difference to me. So thank you for that invitation. So, in conclusion, I simply commend the vitalist movement to you, and I invite your questions.